My name is Diana Kamande. I'm the founder of Come Together Widows and Orphans organization. I'm a widow and a widow leader in Kenya. I started Come Together Widows and Orphans organization in 2013, and the reason as to why I decided to start this organization was to give widows a platform where they could articulate their issues. We have been surrounded by so many issues as widows of Kenya, and we decided that we had to come together and start something that could benefit all widows, no matter the race, no matter the tribe, no matter the financial background, spiritual background. We decided our common denominator was widowhood. And as we continued with this journey, I came to realize about the International Widows Day that had been founded by Lord Lumumba, and it was very first celebrated in 2011. So we decided to adopt this day and started celebrating it in our own small ways, in partnership with other like-minded widow organizations. We celebrated the first International Widows Day in Kenya in 2013, and we celebrated the other one in 2014, 2015, and in 2016, I remember having these plans to celebrate the International Widows Day. One of the PSS in the State Department for Gender Affairs by that time really embraced this idea. I remember immediately the State Department was elevated into a full State Department. The State Department for Gender Affairs was elevated to a full State Department by the head of state, that is His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, our president. Then I realized that this PS was very instrumental in this, whatever we were doing. And I would want to appreciate PS Zainab Hussein for embracing us when we took the idea to her. First of all, I had reached out to her in form of an email, and later on she gave us an appointment. Since then, we have never ever...
CS Ambassador Mina, CS Professor Martin Kobia, my colleagues, principal secretaries here present, our friends from the UN Women, members from the Widows Association, civil society organizations, our friends from the police band, we recognize you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Tuko salama? Tuko chonjo? Today is a celebration. It is a celebration because tulilia la kutosha. We cried when we were widowed. Now is a time to celebrate. We are celebrating because God has given us a gift of life, to be able to be here today to witness this day, being the second time as a country we are celebrating the International Widows Day that happens every 23rd of June every year. Tunashukuru kwamba imetambulika kwamba wajane wanahitaji siku ya kuweza kukaa pamoja, kujadiliana na kuweza kukuza hali zao wao wenyewe kwa kuzungumza pamoja, wakiwa pamoja na serikali, wakiwa pamoja na marafiki na wadau wengine. So I wanted to first of all say karibuni sana to this International Widows Day. We started celebrating this day in the year 2011 as a globe, and for us as Kenya, it's our second time, as I said. It is a day to say no to widow discrimination, abuse, and to promote protection of their rights, because widows' rights are human rights. In many cultures, including Kenya, the rights of widows are tied to their husbands. Once widowed, women in many countries are conferred by denial of inheritance, be it of land assets, and are subject to degrading and life-threatening burial rites and ceremonies. The death of a husband, many times, often marks the beginning of a difficult experience for a widow that takes away their dignity and takes away their rights and freedoms. Therefore, we want to appreciate that ujane hauchagui. Ujane hauchagui umri, hauchagui kabila, hauchagui hali ya maisha, either maskini, matajiri, hauchagui. And it cuts across all ages, and sometimes those widowed are left with very young children. Some of them also very young with low education levels, and therefore are left without any skills. And that is why today's theme, this year's theme, is empowering widows through vocational training, vocational skills training, so that we can be able to equip these widows with skills that can help them to fend for their families. Implementing the theme, therefore, improves the status, both socially and economically, of widows. And I want to appreciate you, Madam Ambassador, for having honored this us with your presence because we know vocational training lies squarely in your ministry. Through the Ministry of Public Service, and ably led by Professor Margaret Kobia, the government has invested in programs that can be harnessed for benefit of widows in this country. Through the affirmative action programs, including funds, we indeed are alive to the plight of widows, and we want to address them through those many programs. I want to assure you, Madam Ambassador, and our CS, Professor Kobia, that these widows are ready and willing to contribute and participate in the government's Big Four agenda. They have the zeal, they have the capacity. All that they need is someone to hold their hand. And I believe you, where you are seated, and with all the connections that you have, this can be made to pass. I want to recognize Madam PS, Madam CS, my colleagues, PS Desai, who is the PS for vocational training. I also want to recognize my colleague and sister, PS Mukobe, anasimamia maswala ya Turati, maswala ya culture. We really appreciate you and celebrate you. Also, Madam Ambassador, allow me to recognize women who have risen above everything else. From the ashes, they have said they will not be defeated. I want to recognize the widows associations that are represented here. Jessica Kiplagat, who is from the Widows of Heroes Foundation that deals with widows from the disciplined forces. I also want to recognize Diana Kamande from Come Together Widows, who has been standing firm on matters of widows. Allow me to also recognize Ms. Batha Gaitho from Muungano wa Wajane and Anasimama na Wajane. Also allow me to recognize Joyce Ngugi, who has the Widows for Widows Foundation, and she stands with widows of members of parliament, legislators. So every widow has a place. Every widow has a home. Every widow has a shoulder to cry on. We have cried enough. It's time to celebrate. Allow me also to recognize our partners, UN Women, who have stood with us through every agenda that is women-related, and the widows' agenda is a women's agenda. Thank you very much, Madam Karine and team. Also, allow me to recognize Mkenya ambaye alikataa kubaki kusema ameenda ng'ambo na kafamilia huko. Allow me to recognize Reverend Jane Wanjiku from MISPA Ministries International from the States. She works with widows, and every year she has programs around this time to be able to advance the agenda for widows' empowerment.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Madam PS. The chief guest, Madam Ambassador Amina Mohammed, Cabinet Secretary for Education. Our CS, Professor Margaret Kobia, Principal Secretary, Honorable Safina Kwekwe Sungu, all Cabinet Secretaries present, Principal Secretaries, eminent men and women, and together with my fellow widows. Good afternoon. It's a great honor to be with all of you today as we celebrate the International Widows Day 2018, being the third one to be celebrated in Kenya, hosted by the government through the Ministry of Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs in partnership with all Kenyan widows from the 47 counties. Our theme this year is empowering widows through vocational training skills, and this opens a partnership for widows and their elected leaders, well-wishers, and the government through all ministries. The number of widows has increased day in, day out due to various reasons like HIV/AIDS, cancer, accidents, armed conflict, and terrorism. At the grassroots level, we have continued to organize widows in small fundable groups, and they have benefited a lot from the available government funds like the Women Enterprise Fund, the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, and the Uwezo Fund, which in English means an enabler fund. We therefore request our government to help us mainstream widow issues at the ward level, constituency level, county level, and the national level. This will help all levels of leadership to support widow groups in their own way and with the available resources at their level. We also want to thank our government and our partner, the UN Women, because this year, 11th to 23rd March, our government in partnership with the UN Women sponsored a widow, and that was myself, to attend the 62nd session of the CSW in New York
and more so articulate the widow issues and the good work our government of Kenya has done in support of the widows. The widow issues were well presented, and we developed a widows charter which we are going to domesticate in Kenya. Some of the things that were mentioned in this charter are: 1, mainstreaming widow issue, because every country cannot solve a problem that it doesn't believe exists. 2, every country should criminalize all actions that oppress widows and their children. 3, remove widow stigma by empowering them and their children. 4, acknowledge that a widow is a dual marginalized woman and she needs a lot of support and counseling. 5, ensure that death certificate is given only to a widow or her children. Let us recall that Kenya is a creative country, resolutely geared towards the future and where some of the world's best innovations are created. Together, let's encourage and help our widows as we celebrate our 3rd International Widows Day in Kenya today. Happy International Widows Day. Thank you.
To acknowledge the chief guest, Madam Ambassador Amina Mohammed, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Education, Madam Margaret Professor Kubia, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry, Public Services and Gender, Honorable P.S. Safina Kwekwe, State Department of Gender, Honorable P.S. Kevich Desai, State Department of Vocational and Technical Education. All protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, again, a very hearty welcome and good afternoon to all of you. I'm representing UN Women. UN Women is the United Nations agency supporting gender equality and women empowerment, and it's a huge privilege and honor to be standing in front of you this afternoon to celebrate the International Widows Day. Today's theme, as it has been said previously, is empowering women through vocational training. This is particularly relevant to Kenya, where a key development challenge is the growing unemployment, especially among the young people and marginalized and vulnerable groups. There is a good reason why vocational training and education is receiving so much attention today. Skills, both technical skills and life skills, are the foundations of any society and economy. In the case of Kenya, this is even more critical. If we want to achieve the Vision 2030 and the Big Four agenda, and we want, as Kenya in 2030, to become a highly industrialized nation. For industrialization, we need increased productivity, and we need the skills, the technical skills of everyone in this country. So it is important to say that technical skills and life skills are the enabler for Kenya to achieve the Big Four agenda and the Vision 2030. As at individual level, the development of skills can be life-changing. And I think the widows represented here today can speak about their own dreams, can speak about overcoming their traumas of widowhood and having shown resilience and courage in your own lives. But we know that by developing skills, we can make a substantive change in our lives. So we can be empowered and we can gain access to meaningful work. We can support our families and we can achieve the goals and make a next step in our careers. So that is exactly what vocational education is about. I would like to encourage you also to explore vocational education opportunities beyond what we call the traditional spheres in vocational education and training. And also acknowledge that those are rapidly becoming saturated sectors. We have seen that a lot of women among you are concentrating in areas which are traditionally women-led areas like tailoring, hairdressing, and basket weaving, with beautiful products and also beautiful signs of our heritage. But we see also that very few women actually look and go into lucrative sectors that are and continue to be heavily male-dominated, such as manufacturing and housing and construction. I can tell you that here in Kenya, only 7% of businesses in the construction sector are owned by women, and only 20% in the construction sector are workers are female workers. So those are areas of work to be explored, and it starts with girls being directed and being encouraged to take new paths in their education, among also vocational education, and to actually go into those male-dominated spheres. So we acknowledge that in certain areas, like, as I've said, manufacturing, housing, construction, there is still a gender gap to be filled. And there is no one solution to fill this gender gap. So we have to work together, the government of Kenya, both at national, at devolved level, but also the private sector, and also vocational education agencies, institutions, to actually address this gender gap in vocational education. So it needs a deliberate and concerted effort of all those different stakeholders to make sure that those areas of work which are lucrative are also accessible to women, to vulnerable women like the widows of Kenya. I would like to offer a few recommendations in how to try to close the gender gap in vocational education. So we really need to make sure that vocational education institutions are accessible to disadvantaged women, especially in rural areas, and make sure that the infrastructure is supportive to them. We also have to make sure that vocational education training increases also the participation of women, widows, marginalized, and take proper care of their multiple roles, and also are innovative in their programs, such as mobile training units or mobile applications for marginalized, for women also to be able to achieve vocational education. And last but not least, training in vocational education institutions have to work with the private sector, with the labor market, to make sure that the trained women find an entrance and have easily access to the labor market. It is encouraging to know that the government of Kenya has invested heavily in vocational education, as demonstrated in the increase in funding towards the sector. In 2018-29 budget, the government of Kenya has allocated 16 billion towards vocational education, in comparison to former budget, which was at 6 billion. So there is a clear commitment by the government of Kenya to invest in vocational education. But we would like to recommend to make sure that the newly hired vocational trainers are also female technical trainers, to make sure that those then also attract more female trainees. I would like to end with a quote by Martin Luther King saying, "No work is insignificant. All labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance, and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence." Thank you. Asante sana.
Mohammed C.S. Kobia, ladies and gentlemen, I too join you in your celebration of the International Widows' Day today, and to in particular tell you the significance of competency-based education and training, which is something that we're now trying to adopt within the Tibet fraternity. which will be a major transformation within technical vocational education training, promoting the highest levels of outcomes of self-employment, gainful employment, but structured in a way which is modular, it's accessible, it promotes the highest level of equity, access, quality and relevance. And ladies and gentlemen, with such a large network of 750 vocational institutions, 290 technical TVETs, as well as 11 polytechnics and 11 science technology institutes, the world of TVET is greatly accessible, but most importantly has such diversity. And as individuals of the society, you can access it in many, many different ways. One way is to recognize your prior experience, the experience that you have in all the skills that you achieve on a day-by-day basis, and this can be done through assessment. Each of our institutions will have capacities to assist in assessing existing experiential and skills-based capacities within yourselves, and a certification which will promote greater levels of equality, greater levels of equity will be provided in turn. There are also other ways in which you can train. They're based on the modular system. The system enables you to train for 3 months and then work and then come back and for further training. And so the ability to further your training has been greatly extended within this new national system called competency-based education and training. The third aspect is, of course, to promote innovation. Many of you produce creations. These are commercial. The possibility that some of these innovations, some of this creativity could be further amplified from an economic perspective is also possible within our TVET institutions. And finally, the aspects and possibilities that you could create and be part of a nexus between the micro, small, medium enterprise sector and TVET. This is something that we are working towards in order to create a structured framework where, on one hand, we're able to promote the transition of young people into gainful employment, self-employment, but on the other hand, using our existing facilities within TVET institutions and all the infrastructure that we have, and the trainers and the networks, both local and international, that there could be a possibility that you're able to enhance the levels of productivity, innovation and efficiency within your work, thereby increasing the sustainability as well as the transformation of some of the activities that you already do. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, TVET cuts across the entire value chain of work, one of the most ancient capacities that we have as humanity, but covers everything from culinary skills to agricultural skills to manufacturing to the possibilities of hospitality and every single aspect of our life, which makes it more exciting today to take up new skills, to take up new capacities, and to be able to cut across different fields. And I think that this is one of the most exciting times as we roll out a framework called competency-based education and training to further not only empower yourself, but to have a structured system that promotes a high level of equity and equality throughout our national system. So I do look forward to your involvement in many different ways, and I today wish you much success as you look into the possibility of TVET and that towards transport.
Thank you very much, PS Kwekwe. Our chief guest, Ambassador Amina Mohammed, who is also CS for Ministry of Education, Principal Secretaries here led by PS Kwekwe, UN representative, the CEO Unclaimed Properties, development partners present, public servants, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. God is good, and all the time. Wow. And we can say, this far God has been, and God has brought us this far as widows, and I'm sure that's why I'm happy that today we are celebrating. I feel very well honored to welcome you to this occasion as we join the rest of the world in commemorating this year's International Widows Day. This day was launched in the United Nations in the year 2010 and was first celebrated on 23rd June 2011 to raise awareness on violation of human rights that widows suffer in many countries following the death of their spouses. This is a day to reflect on the challenges faced by women, especially widows, to take stock on the gains that we have made over the years and appreciate their resilience to succeed among difficulties following the loss of the loved ones. Let me also say that International Women's Day is celebrated globally, right, started by the UN, because it was realized women face many challenges, women in general, access to education, access to finance, discrimination, exposed to harmful practices, but above all, women who are widows suffer more. They suffer injustices, they suffer poverty levels. Therefore, today, us being here to celebrate, to reflect, to mark the gain, we can just thank the Kenya government. When I came in, a lot of you confused me with the Ambassador Amina Mohammed. But I want to say my name is Margaret Kobia, the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs, and particularly Gender Affairs. Our chief guest, I received some of your claps when I arrived. I'm happy to give you back because he is also a dear sister when we called upon her to come and be with us, simply because the topic, the work she has done for this country is amazing. Right from a public servant, she was a PS in the Ministry of Justice, then you ran the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for a long time, and now she's the Ministry of Education, where vocational education. Can you give her a clap? Where vocational education has been given the prominence that it requires. The government is putting in a lot of money, and I'll leave that to her to articulate, because we are saying women will be empowered if they have vocational skills that they can use to generate money. The bottom line is to generate what? Pesa, pesa. You must do something that gives you money. Therefore, if you have a skill that can help you get a job, I think that is great. Secondly, on the same, we women in general, let us take our children to vocational training, because that's where the jobs are, not to the universities. Even if we take them to universities, take them back, they run a bit of vocational training which they can use. I sometimes go around the country, and I've seen some people who have gone through university and they have come back to do a vocation. So I want us to change our attitude and ask ourselves, what is bringing our money in our pockets so that we can improve the quality of life? Therefore, if we are fighting another level as widows of injustice and poverty, then we must ask ourselves what brings that resources. Two, I would urge all of us who follow under Association of Widows to support your leaders. I particularly have interacted with Diana Kamande, who is right there with us, who understands the issues to do with the struggles of widows. Please, let's support leaders at constituency level, so that if we work together as women widows, we are likely to get some mileage in terms of benefiting from what the government has put aside as a way of confronting that challenge. We must also thank the government, what the government has done. Government, as is led by His Excellency the President Uhuru Kenyatta, he loves women in general, and particularly that way he has got a docket of gender affairs, which I head, and the PS is the PS in the gender affairs. We might take that for granted, but in a government that cares about women, and women especially in difficult situations like widows, and we have that docket and can focus on how we can solve some of those problems. Therefore, looking at this day is not being celebrated only in Kenya, it's global. And that's why the founder of this particular day, when I was trying to look how did this day originate, a founder who I called Mr. Room, celebrated the day of, helped find the day 23rd June, because that is when his mother lost their father. Therefore, having a day like this and focusing on it every time gives us some warm moments, and I am very happy that we have spent a lot of time here celebrating. Because when we celebrate, our mind, we kind of start feeling joy and a positive outlook in life that helps us to benefit from the gains and the opportunities around. My day was not really to speak. If you have a chief guest, actually you are supposed, my biggest task here is to invite our chief guest. But before I do that, I just want to mention some of areas that the government has put to address the challenges faced by the widow, especially moving forward and this particular administration. As you may have noted through the exhibition that we went around our chief guest, you realize government has established a affirmative action fund to provide affordable financing for to women, youth, and people living with disability. The government has also developed and implemented the national policy on prevention and response to gender-based violence. And here I can say, if you look at the statistics, even widows tend even to suffer more when it comes to gender-based violence, maybe compared with the general population. We have also developed the National Equality Policy, implementation and development of National Action Plan for the UN Resolution 1332 on women, peace, and security. I think that, to me, that resolution is very, very important because women and even widows, the role they play in peace and security building in any country cannot be gainsaid. During this year's 2062 session on Commission on Status of Women in New York, the Kenyan delegation had a widows representative, and their effort culminated in development of Widows Charter. This charter proposes a robust measures towards the improved well-being of widows. The Ministry of Public Service, Youth and Gender, in partnership with European Union in 2016-2017, developed a strategy for the greater participation of women in politics and decision-making. The strategy proposes various approaches to enhancing women's participation in politics and decision-making, namely financial support, prevention of gender-based violence, political party support at the nomination stage, capacity building of female aspirants in the public speaking, and the personal etiquette and the sensitization on media preparedness. Widows are going to benefit from these measures for their improved participation in leadership and decision making. Our chief guest, in addition, the government in partnership with the UN agencies is implementing a joint program on gender-based violence that intend to protect women from all forms of GBV through measures of prevention, protection, prosecution, programming, and partnership. All duty bearers in this field have been trained and are providing services to the public with women unique vulnerability in mind. The campaign against FGM has been boosted, leading to the reduction of FGM prevalence from 27% to 21% in 2014, and the figure is set to continue coming down. My ministry, therefore, acknowledges that a widow is a poor, marginalized woman and is aware of the numerous challenges they face. Most widows have been suffering in silence while enduring depression, emotional and financial constraints, but single-handedly fending for their children. And I'm happy the child who spoke here, whatever God wanted him to be is going to be. Do you believe it? Yes. So I think for us women, whatever our children, God destined them to be, they are going to be with or without a spouse because He has provided for them. Nevertheless, widows have remained strong and they keep their children in schools and colleges. I commend you for your resilience, strength, and determination amid these tough times. As a Cabinet Secretary responsible for Women Affairs, I pledge my personal pledge to work with all concerned agencies to ensure that all forms of violence and discrimination, whether social, economic, or political against women and girls, will be dealt with according to our laws, and women will fully enjoy our fundamental rights and freedom. This year's International Women's Day, empowering widows through vocational training, skills training, should act as a clarion call for policymakers in vocational training and other stakeholders. In a nutshell, therefore, I call for concerted efforts from more of us in elimination of retrogressive laws, regulations, policies, cultural practices, and stereotypes that violate widows' fundamental rights and freedom. We must selflessly guard on grandmothers, on our aunts and our sisters and our daughters against all forms of discrimination. As I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, our chief guest, I want to thank you all for finding time to come and commemorate this day together, celebrate, rejoice, and I once again want to assure you my support and that of the Ministry of Public Service, and at the same time underscore, no ministry works alone, because if we work alone, Ambassador will not have been here today. There is that need of ministries working across to realize government's agenda and the Vision 2030, which aims at improving the quality of life for all Kenyans. Finally, I want to thank each and everyone for the effort you made to be here. For all the organizing committees, right at the lowest level, up to the PS level, up to the Windows organization, each one of you, the way you are praying to make today a success. We should not leave the way we came. Let me now take this opportunity to introduce Ambassador Amina Mohammed, who is our chief guest.
Our principal secretaries, led by the principal secretary in charge of gender affairs, Honorable Safina Kwekwe Tsungu. Let me also recognize in a very special way Diana Kamade, Corinne from UN Women, Kellen Kariuki, who was very kind to have a stand here so that you could all get an opportunity to actually find out if there were some resources that were lying unclaimed with her and that you could have access to. I would like to recognize Joyce Ngugi, who is here with us, Honorable Sarah Godana. And I'll tell you that I met her last night at a function where we were actually supporting some children, some of who were orphans. And I told her that I was coming here. And she said, oh my goodness, I didn't hear about that, but I must go because I'm a widow and I'd like to be among other widows to offer my solidarity, to encourage each other, because in our unity we have strength. And I was really happy to see her here. I'd also like to recognize the team from the Ministry of Public Service and Gender, led by our MC, for the support that you have given to this function. There's a very special person in the house today, and he actually took his time to come here to be with us. I can only imagine how much effort, how much time, how much commitment he put into coming up with this wonderful poem for all of us. Laban, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. I'm very, very happy, ladies and gentlemen, to be here with you today. In fact, I'm privileged and I'm honored to engage not just with you, but with the rest of the world in celebrating this amazing day, the International Widows' Day for the year 2018. You know, I was told that we have been celebrating, this is the second year that we're celebrating this, but that in fact it began in 2011. And so I keep wondering why it took us so long to start celebrating it. But I think it was actually waiting for the administration of President Uhuru Kenyatta to make sure that we celebrated it. So let's give him a big hand of applause. There was a lady who insisted that widows must have this special day. The First Lady of Gabon. Her name is Sylvia Bongo Ondimba. And so I'd also like to acknowledge and thank her for the role that she played in formalizing the recognition of this day within the United Nations framework. And of course, our own First Lady, Mrs. Margaret Kenyatta, who has been very compassionate and has worked with all vulnerable women and children in our society. And then, of course, my own friend and sister, Professor Kobia. Thank you very much for inviting me. I think she invited me to be the keynote speaker and the chief guest. But she could have also just invited me to be a participant. So I'm hoping that in the years following this, that I can actually come and just be part of you so that we can continue supporting each other. The Ministry of Gender has set exemplary standards in social protection and the empowerment of our people, particularly our women and our youth. So ladies and gentlemen, today there are 258 million widows worldwide, 585 million dependent children. Those are really big figures. 38 million of these live in extreme poverty and are excluded from the development data, omitted from deliberate interventions to address their plight. Widowhood is a special status because its cause results from a loss, a deep loss. Destabilizes the family unit. It also destabilizes the mechanisms of a dual or multiple support economy. In most cases, and more importantly, over 60% of women on this continent in Africa are widowed by HIV/AIDS, by malaria, tuberculosis, traffic accidents, or related accidents. There are also many, and we have amongst us one who actually stands here in support of them. There are many who died in the course of duty, making the ultimate sacrifice to keep our country safe. And we really recognize and acknowledge all of them. The complexities of the status of women around the world, resulting from cultural, religious, political, social, or economic practices, also demand special consideration for widows. Questions of inheritance that my sister has referred to, matrimonial property, remarriage, wife inheritance, come to the fore. And along with them, age-old practices that disadvantage women's progress and women's empowerment in general. According to the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, while data is limited, available information actually suggests that less than 1/4 of agricultural land holdings in developing countries is operated by women. Less than 1/4. And yet, women are over 50% of the population of our countries. So that's actually gives maybe part of the story. Low female access and control of land significantly obstructs access to financial assets, and I know that all of us have been victim of that, including credit and savings. So an international comparison was made of agricultural census data, and it shows that less than 20% of landowners are women. In Africa, it's even less than 20% of our landowners being women. And in this part of the continent, in Eastern Africa, only up to 30% of individual titles are held by women. And I hope that a certain percentage of that 30% of the individual titles are held by the widows. Women's low access to land limits their capacity to generate income or self-sustaining modes of livelihood in our agricultural societies. Now in the workplace, it's even worse. Gender representation is critically below par. And here, in the developing countries, in 53 out of 71 countries, female managers have less experience than their male counterparts. Now, what does that tell us? What do these statistics actually tell us? They indicate that there's an urgent need to promote skilling opportunities for women, particularly the vulnerable in our society. That includes those of you who are here with us today. So this year's theme is extremely important because it actually addresses that, empowering widows through vocational skills training. It's a call to action by countries to provide livelihood avenues for the most vulnerable in our society, including the widows. In Kenya today, there are 987 vocational training centers, and they are spread across our 47 counties. The current enrollment is about 90,000 students. Too low, too small. We need more of you in those vocational training centers. And as you've heard, the government is investing a lot of money in them. I'll tell you something else. The money that the government is investing, apart from equipping and providing soft and hard infrastructure in these vocational training centers, is also meant to ensure that you don't pay a penny to go into these training vocational institutions. That you go in completely free of any fees. And so the government is providing quite a bit of money for capitation. It's also making available loans through HELB to make sure that you also have some money out of pocket So you know, ladies and gentlemen, today there is absolutely no reason why you should remain unskilled. Not you, not your children. You have access, free access to skilling. And my colleagues have talked about the big four. Without these skills, they will not happen. And if they do, not as fast as we want them to happen. So we need to skill our population. And you are a big part of that population. So please use all the tools that are at your disposal to empower yourselves and make the contribution that you must to our national development. These centers offer a broad range of skills, from dressmaking to carpentry, masonry, plumbing, food, beverage, metal and woodwork, and other essential qualifications. Listen, there is no shortage. Whatever you can do, we can skill you to do better. Additionally, we're actually working to make sure that apart from you going into these vocational training institutions, that industry provides you with access to internships, to further training, and to support, so that as you leave these training centers, you can actually get employment. So, whereas we must continue dreaming and aiming high, even for our children. Right? We must also acknowledge that the ultimate reason why we take our children to school is because we want them to be independent, to sustain themselves, to have families, and be able to look after their children. Now, if that is true, then the vocational training centers offers the best shot for that. I know that you have children who've completed university and are graduates, maybe even have 2 or 3 degrees, and are still tamarking. Is that not true? Yeah? They're still tamarking. Well, let me tell you that if these children go even for 3 months, 6 months to these vocational training centers, that within 6 months of their finishing, they would have had internships, maybe apprenticeships, and jobs. So please encourage them to do that. But even without you encouraging them, they're doing it themselves anyway. Because this year, when we placed students in universities, a big number of them who had actually qualified to go to university chose instead to go to vocational training institutes. Because they too want to take the burden off your backs. They don't want you to continue supporting them. The difficulty before was that you had to pay to take your children to these centers. And that's why the government worked really hard to make sure that we provide the resources that these centers need, so that you do not have to pay to go and get skilled and contribute to the development of our country. I have a lot of figures here, right, that will tell you what the skills gaps are in our country. Right? In construction, yeah, we don't have electricians. We have very, very few. Welders, we only have 13% of what we need. Masons, we only have 12% of what we need. Carpenters and painters, we actually have only 10% of what we actually need. And we cannot start importing these welders while our children are jobless on the streets, right? That doesn't make sense at all. Right? It also doesn't make sense that those of you that can get skilled, right, are not skilled, and yet there are these opportunities that are out there. So I think we should look at these figures, and I will leave some of this information with your organizations that are here, so that they can look at them, and as they provide guidance, they can talk to you about this. We'll also, with my peers, find ways of making sure that we actually work with these organizations, right, to involve you in everything that we're doing going forward. Even, interior specialist artisans, which I know women are good at, because I didn't even go to school to train for that. right? None of us did. But yet we try and make our homes as beautiful as they can be, right? In this country, we only have 2% of what we need. We don't have 98% of our requirements, right? That should be a field that's of interest. And it's also a very lucrative field because you'll find very many busy people who don't have the time to do that and that would want to rely on you to provide that kind of support. So I will not go any further into those figures, but I'll tell you this, that we will work very, very closely with the Ministry of Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs to facilitate special programs for you and other vulnerable groups in our society. And we'll do this for the vocational and training centers. I'd like to therefore ask my colleague and my friend as well, Kevin Desai, to spearhead the designing of special programs that will allow convenient and continuous skilling of widows in various sections. Let me also say something that is true, that most of us, including obviously our widows, we actually lose the skills that we had previously acquired. Because we get so busy with bringing up our families, looking after our spouses, making our homes comfortable, that we actually lose those. And so there's also an opportunity for us to go back to that and see whether we can actually upscale it. Everything today that we do can be upscaled. Everything. From the way that we clean our homes, to the way we make our beds, to the way we do our gardening outside, to the way we interior decorate our homes, everything can be upscaled. Right? And the president and the government has made sure that we have the resources to do that. Let me also say this, that many of our spouses actually succumb to illnesses. And I've talked about some of those illnesses. Those have become a huge responsibility to our families and to our government. And you know, most of the support that's provided, most of the care that's provided is provided by women. And even that needs to be upskilled, and we have centers to do that. We have centers that will train you on how to take care of sick relatives, of anybody that needs that kind of support. So in order to provide a dignified avenue to transfer the skills that you have acquired as women in home-based caregiving, which often ends up as a full-time job, and to supplement the needs of our healthcare sector, I'm going to work very closely with my colleagues from the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Public Service, of Youth, of Gender, to establish avenues for recognizing, reskilling, and employing these invaluable skills into our primary and palliative health care sector as a form of realizing our President's universal health coverage pillar. So there is nothing that should go to waste. And as government, we will work together with all the ministries involved so that the care that you give is actually recognized and even certified. So you can also use that as an avenue for supporting yourselves. And to support that, today I will direct the Kenya National Qualifications Authority to work with the State Department of Post-Training and Skills Development to set in place mechanisms for the recognition of prior learning, prior experience, to improve access to qualifications for all of you, thus promoting skills development and lifelong learning. We have been supported along the way by our development partners, and UN Women is here. I know that the EU has also provided support in various forms to make sure that this day is celebrated, but also to actualize our policies in financing, in equipping, technology transfer, and also providing apprenticeship support across our country to everybody. And so I want to thank them. And please let's acknowledge Karim, who is here, and who has come up with some amazing proposals, right? And I'll just repeat 2 or 3 of them. One of the issues that were raised in her statement was to make sure that we provided access to disadvantaged women. And I'm standing here, Karim, to tell you that the 2 ministries that are here, together with the others that are not here, have done that, and we will upscale to make sure that this support is provided and this access is provided. Right? I've talked about access to our vocational training centers. I think that's a big one. Let's use it. But we will also work with the UN Women to make sure that we look at other areas. Infrastructure, as I said, infrastructure, we have hard infrastructure in place. We'll work on the soft infrastructure so that the institutions are friendly, they're widow friendly. And I think that the one that really struck me as being important is the mobile training units. And I think I and Kevit will look at that to see how we can actually work on that to make sure that we reach those groups that cannot get to the training facilities. That the mobile training units, I think, is a really amazing proposal. It's something that we have not worked on before. We've worked on mobile health facilities, yes, but we haven't looked at this, so I think it's something that we can look at. We're also working with industry to make sure that space is created for any of you that are trained through these centers. Now, I want to end by saying 2 things. One is that I'm appealing to UN Women to actually look at the possibility of having a decade for widows. I said that the numbers are huge. The numbers are really, really big. And I think if we actually had 10 years, a decade, when we could focus on your challenges, on your difficulties, but on also the support, the encouragement, the resources that can be provided to you to empower you, and we can focus the world's attention, not just one country, not a continent, but the world's attention on your challenges. Right? I think then we'll be able to break that circle, right, and give you what you really need. So together, I think we'll work on making this, at least having a rally cry and saying that we really would like to see 10 years dedicated to our widows. And let me finally say this, that the soul of a nation is seen by how well it protects its elderly, its sick, its widows, and its orphans. And we in government, led by my sister, Professor Kobia, will work in concert to ensure that we provide the best opportunities for our widows. So I want to thank you very, very much, to say that I'm really happy to be here, that I have been properly adorned, as you can see, right, by some of you out there in the stands. We removed the headgear because we wanted to be able to communicate directly, but we've agreed that as we leave here, we'll put them back on. Yeah, but really, thank you very, very much. I know it's not easy. I was brought up part of my life by a mother who was also widowed. And life was very, very challenging. But she told me that all you need to do when life becomes difficult is to take your shuka, tie it around your, there you go, and you do that every day, and get to work and do what you can as best as you can. She was not educated at all. She didn't go to school. And so tying that shuka around her waist meant that she had to toil with her hands and use everything that she had to ensure, and you know, that was the other thing. There were 9 of us, and she wanted to make sure that each one of us went to school. Yeah? But you know, she was not unique, and she told us this every morning when she woke up. When we looked at her and said, "Oh, Mama, you're having such a difficult time," she would say, "No, I'm not alone. There are so many of us." right? So I'm not going to sit back and wait for somebody to come. And I will not tell you today what she did, but it was not easy work. It was very, very hard work. And all that she did was make sure that she invested in her children, as you do every single day. And that's why we're trying so hard in government to make sure that these pathways that we're creating for your children to find employment, to get skilled, are made easier by the day. We have experienced what you're experiencing. And so we stand here in solidarity. If we stand together, we'll comfort each other, we will encourage each other, we will support each other. You have something that she did not have in her day. You have organizations that actually support you, that bring you together, that hold your hands. You have a government that has created tools to support you, right? And so I think today we want to thank the Almighty God for His grace, for the support that we continue to get, right? You are our heroes, and you will continue to be our heroes. Thank you very, very much.
Looked back. We have continued to celebrate International Widows Day in Kenya, and the numbers have been overwhelming. Kenya is believed to have over 4 million widows, and the number has continued to increase. And during this time of COVID-19, the pandemic has had triple effects on widows, the children, and also widows' businesses. But nevertheless, we have continued to shine beyond the challenges of widowhood. This year, we are so much delighted, and we thank Lord Lumba because of this day. We are celebrating 10 years down the line since inception of the International Widows Day, when it was first celebrated in 2011. We thank you so much, Lord Lumba. Out of International Widows Day, we have had a platform to discuss with our leaders, and more so the government, church leaders, other organizations, partnerships for widows, and we have continued to increase. We have also been able to articulate issues of widowhood also in the international platforms like Commission Status for Women, among other international meetings. We have been able to represent widows in Africa and out of Africa, and this is just because of the International Widows Day, a day that widows and their children and their plight has been fully recognized. Out of this partnership, we have seen widows being economically empowered. In Kenya, widows have been able to partner with government affirmative action funds. Women Enterprise Fund has been able to give our widows business loans. Uwezo Fund, which is a Swahili word that means enabler, a fund that is an enabler, which has helped our widows, and our widows have been able to borrow Uwezo Fund, and they have done businesses, and these funds, they are interest free. You borrow 100,000 Kenya shillings, you return it as 100,000 Kenya shillings. And then there came another fund that has been a very great relief to widows and their businesses, and it is the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. This is a fund that comes to address issues that are related to cases of vulnerable people, where widows and their children are considered the youths and persons living with disability. The good thing about this fund that our government created, and that is this fund is a fund that is given by the women representatives, or other members of parliament who are county women representatives, and this fund is purely a grant. When widows get this fund, it is a grant to help them boost their businesses. So we continue asking Lord Lumba and the Lumba Foundation also to think about partnering with our widows. And we cannot forget the balloons that we blew last year, 2019, during the International Widows Day in Kenya, when we were when our Principal Secretary for Gender was flagging off our event, where we started with a very peaceful march. These balloons were sent all the way from United Kingdom, courtesy of Lord Lumba. We want to say thank you, and we continue asking for your extended support and partnership. And we would also like to host you for our next year International Widows Day. We kindly request you to be our chief guest of honor in 2021 in Kenya. Thank you.